Yo, how's it going? Stop pretending like you care about Ukraine. It that title immediately railed me, grabbed me, and let's go ahead and start.
What's happening in Ukraine is nothing new. Way back in
Hmm.
2008, they used the exact same playbook they're using right now to invade a different country, the country of Georgia. I'm
Really?
talking about the 2008 Russo-Georgian War.
I never
This
knew
war
this.
only lasted 5 days, but every single thing that happened then is repeating itself in Ukraine today. Just
Hmm.
like Ukraine, Georgia was once part of the Soviet Union. Just like Ukraine, after the fall of the Soviet Union, both these countries got their independence and tried starting anew. They were cooperating with the West, joining American military drills, and trying to put their Soviet days behind them. But for
Okay.
Russia, that was unacceptable. Who did these small insignificant countries think they were, aligning themselves with the enemy when they were right at the
Wow.
footsteps of Mother Russia? The Soviet Union may have been gone, but the resentment and distrust of America didn't magically disappear. And now here were some of Russia's closest neighbors, all but inviting America in to set up military bases right on Russia's borders. What would America do if Russia suddenly built a military base on the Mexican border? It would
Hmm.
be unacceptable.
Yeah, it would.
So Russia made it clear to these countries, stay away from NATO, keep America out of your military, and then you get to keep your independence. But if you
Wow.
even try to join NATO, or if you become too friendly with America, there will be dangerous consequences. That was the deal. And for a couple of years, most of the ex-Soviet countries stuck with it. But then as time passed, joining the West became a little too tempting. You see, all of this keep NATO out stuff had left countries like Georgia and Ukraine vulnerable to Russia's influence. Sure, they had their independence, but Russia still controlled their politicians and governments through money and aid. But if they somehow joined NATO, they could turn all of that around. They wouldn't need Russia's money or protection anymore. And that's
That's facts. If you want, you want to be independent, and if you're still if you still gotta rely on Russia's money and stuff, you're not really you're independent to a point. Because then, if something happens, Russia's just sanctions you with on your money and stuff. Like that suck. Everything would just blow up in your face basically. And yeah, this is why you would want to
where
join
things got
NATO
ugly.
and stuff.
Because as soon as these countries started asking how to join NATO, or as soon as they became too American, Russia saw it as a direct threat. Didn't we explain the consequences? Here were these tiny helpless little states doing exactly what Russia told them not to do. And the best way to get these countries back under Russia's control? Invade.
So fucked, dude.
In the last 15 years, Russia has used this exact invasion playbook 3 times. First, it starts with supporting
3 times.
pro-Russian separatists in these countries. Separatists are people who want autonomy, who want to turn the land they live on into their own country separate from the actual country they're living in. These separatists would attack Ukrainian and Georgian soldiers, call for independence, and do everything they could to cooperate with Russia. They were Russia's inside guys, tasked with causing chaos and fear and preparing the country for invasion. Next, Russia would carry out military drills and training inside the separatist regions. They would quietly sneak in weapons and soldiers, pretending they were just there for some peacekeeping exercises. But in reality, they were amassing weapons and troops, waiting for orders to invade. And when the rest of the world starts pointing fingers and asking questions, well, they would then just make a big show of withdrawing, only leaving a few reserve soldiers and all their weapons behind. And with that, the stage is set. The weapons and equipment are on the border, and it's almost time to attack. Now all Russia needs is an excuse. They need a legitimate reason to send their troops in, and that's where the provocation comes in. Basically, Russia starts pushing all the country's buttons, trying to get them to make the first move, any move. By now, these
Okay.
ex-Soviet countries are freaking out. They are sure Russia is about to invade. They know they don't have the weapons or expertise to fight back, and they're doing everything they can to act first. So they play right into Russia's hand. Whether they push to join NATO, preemptively attack the separatist rebels, or even just suggest an attack, it's all the excuse Russia needs. Almost immediately after the first act of aggression, Russia invades. Their excuse? Always to keep the peace and protect the people, obviously. That's what happened
Holy
in Georgia
shit.
in 2008, and that's what's
Wow.
happening right now in Ukraine. But what is the endgame? Obviously, Georgia is still an independent country, so Russia didn't win the 2008 war, right? But what if winning the war was never their objective? What if Russia had a much more sinister motive than just re-establishing the Soviet Union? To understand what this could mean for Ukraine and the rest of the world, we'll have to go back in time. Back to when Georgia was Russia's biggest headache instead of Ukraine. Back when the world got a 5-day glimpse and how they dealt with their rebellious neighbors in the past. My name is Jake Tran. I make
Holy shit.
documentaries on money, power, war, and crime with my team. Subscribe for more. If you want to win $1,000 cash, all you have to do is follow me on Instagram at Jake Tran and you're automatically entered. Watch out for fake accounts. I would never message you asking for money or to invest. And this is Russia's invasion of Georgia.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's definitely something I never knew. I never knew Ukraine. I mean, Russia invaded Georgia for a while, and then they had the same like plot that they did for Ukraine. Wow, this is gonna be a fun video.
With the world spiraling into chaos, it's more important than ever to be saving and investing to build long-term wealth, so that you have a safety net in the long term. The problem is, rich people get access to exclusive investments that regular people like you and I don't get access to. Like investing in early stage startups, for example, a very high risk and equally high reward strategy. Why are only rich people able to invest in startups? Outdated regulations say you're too stupid to do so. Yes, it is completely legal to go bankrupt, gambling all your money away on the lottery. It's legal to gamble all your money away at the casino, and yet if you wanted to invest your own money into a private company before they're listed on the stock markets, you can't. That's why they have the accredited investor rule, a fancy term that means you need to be a millionaire or be making over $200K a year to invest in private startups.
Wow,
Basically,
really?
the government is saying you already have to be rich to get rich. This really frustrated a guy named Jesse, so after years of maneuvering through convoluted regulations, he was finally able to launch Sweater, the VC fund that allows anyone to invest in early stage startups without already being rich, without being accredited. That means anyone can download the Sweater app from the App Store, sign up for free, and be able to invest in the most exclusive asset class in the world, venture capital. With a minimum investment of $500 and no cap, it's accessible to practically everyone. The money you invest gets pulled together with other Sweater members, which allows Sweater to put together competitive VC deals. Sweater's experienced investment team will then invest that money into emerging tech and product startups poised for growth, companies you'll see in your everyday life. VC investing is a long-term mindset. Invest and wait, just like you would with your 401k or IRA. Many startups take 10 years or more to reach an acquisition or IPO, and with Sweater, you can continue growing your position through weekly or monthly recurring contributions. The Sweater Fund is also evergreen, meaning that your venture portfolio never stops growing. As they continue to invest, you'll get broad private market exposure to the most innovative venture-backed companies before they go public. What's cool is that Sweater literally just launched, so if you want the chance to join Sweater as a founding member, so you can get in at the starting value of the fund, go to sweaterventures.com/JakeTrent to join the Sweater party and invest now. That's
Investing is something I personally would like to get to know and understand. I would really like to just make the time and just maybe just study it and understand what investing, because I see this and honestly speaking, I don't it's just I don't get it, I think I should definitely try and learn what it means to invest and how to invest, which is, and yeah,
sweaterventures.com/JakeTran with the link below. Thanks to Sweater for sponsoring this video.
That's cool. This is a cool site, it seems. A prelude to war.
Georgia has a long history of wanting to be their own country, and in 1918, they actually managed to declare independence from the Russian Empire. But fast forward 3 years, and the Red Army invades, forcing Georgia and its neighbor Abkhazia to become Soviet republics. Unlike today, the land that formed part of the Soviet Union wasn't really divided into independent countries. Georgia wasn't its own country with its own president and its own laws or any of that. It was more like a state that formed part of the Great Soviet Union. And in this state of Georgia, there were two groups of people who didn't really like being grouped together with the rest: the South Ossetians and the Abkhazians. They didn't feel like Georgia really represented their people. So, while still under the Soviet Union's control, they did their best to separate themselves from the rest of the Georgian Republic. Fast forward to the near end of the Soviet Union, and South Ossetia finally declares its independence from Georgia, a year before the USSR falls. But then, the Soviet Union goes down, and now all of these states that were part of the USSR have to figure out where their borders are, who controls what, and how this independence thing was gonna work. So
that's a fucking headache. That's just conflict straight up. People are just gonna be, no, this piece is my land. No. You're taking too much. Push back. Oh, that would be such
Georgia's new government comes and says, hey, we're gonna be independent from Russia, and we're taking the South Ossetians and Abkhazians with us. You guys are way too small to be countries of your own anyway, so just join Georgia and we'll look after you. That was the pitch. But the South Ossetians and Abkhazians weren't having any of it. In their minds, they were nothing like the Georgians. They spoke a different language, had different traditions, and they actually preferred life under the Soviet Union where they could govern themselves. So they went to war.
Oh shit. Wow.
And for the next couple of years, the Abkhazian separatists fought tooth and nail to get out of Georgia. Obviously, with Russia desperately holding on to its Soviet legacy, it did everything it could to support the Abkhazians against this new independent Georgia. But in the end, the fighting didn't really go anywhere. So in 1994, both sides agreed to a ceasefire, and for the next decade or so, things were pretty quiet. Sure, there's the occasional rebel attack, and relations between the three groups are pretty tense, but nothing near a full-scale war. That is, until Georgia starts talking about joining NATO. With all the separatists on their doorstep, Georgia started thinking maybe asking to join NATO would be worth the risk. That way, they would have backup in case another war broke out. But to Russia, that wasn't an option. If Georgia joined NATO, who would be next? Ukraine? Oh no. They were gonna have to teach Georgia and all the ex-Soviet countries a lesson. So Russia starts pumping money to the separatists. By 2008, almost all the South Ossetians carried Russian passports, and Russia paid for more than 2/3 of their yearly budget. And while all of this was going on, Georgia knew it was playing with fire, but they still thought they could join NATO before anything really bad happened. The only problem was, they didn't realize how quickly Russia could attack.
Dude, all this for power. Just... Dude.
Between April and August 2008, relations between Georgia and the separatists went even more sour than usual. According to Russia, Georgia was assembling troops to invade Abkhazia. So in retaliation, Russia starts riling up their separatist supporters. A couple weeks later, a Georgian drone gets shot down over Abkhazia. Georgia blames the Russians. Now, things are really heating up. May 2008. Unarmed Russian soldiers enter Abkhazia to, quote, fix a railway line, end quote. Georgia calls it an act of aggression, and the tension builds even more. Things go back and forth like this for months. Using all the confusion and fear as cover, Russia had already moved their soldiers into position in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Now, all they needed was for Georgia to take the first swing.
Yeah.
August 1st, 2008. An IED near South Ossetia's capital explodes as a Georgian police vehicle drives by. In response, the Georgian army starts firing at South Ossetian rebel bases. Checkmate. Russia has its excuse to invade, and the game was over for Georgia before it even began. Almost immediately, a full-scale war breaks out. It starts with small battles across the Georgian and South Ossetian border, but as the days go by, Georgia keeps rolling in more and more soldiers. Outgunned and outmanned, the South Ossetians ask Russia for help, and on August 7th, 2008, the Kremlin officially joins the fight.
Oh shit, dude. They won.
The next 5 days put Georgians through hell. The Russians are dropping bombs, assembling troops, and sending fighter jets over the Georgian capital. Russia's military isn't even fully engaged yet, and the Georgians are already feeling the heat. They're begging for NATO and America to step in, to support them and put Russia back in its place. But nothing happens. The best the West can offer is calls for a ceasefire. For 5 days, Russia decimated Georgia, stopping its attack just 30 miles from the country's capital. It was clear who the winner was going to be. Georgia's military couldn't compete with Russia, and without the West's help, Georgians were ready to accept defeat. But then, on August 12th, just 5 days after launching their attacks, the bombing stops. The tanks that were on their way to the capital come to a standstill on the side of the road. Russia had proven its power, and it cost Georgia millions. Now that Georgia was on its knees, it was time to negotiate. For the next few days, the presidents of Russia, Georgia, and France meet to talk details. Russia has shown Georgia exactly what will happen if they don't cooperate, and the Georgian president was more than happy to negotiate for peace. In the end, the two countries agreed to a 6-point ceasefire plan. The first 4 points were pulled up by the French president and were the usual stop fighting, go back to your bases kind of thing. But the last 2 points, they were added by Russia and were non-negotiable. 1. Russian peacekeeping troops would be allowed access to South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and parts of Georgia. And 2. The independence of the separatist regions in Georgia would need to be discussed in the future. August 16th. Both countries sign the agreement, and Russia starts withdrawing some of its troops.
Okay.
10 days later, the Russian president officially recognizes South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent states. Russia was never looking for peace after the war. It wasn't looking for compromise. It was showing the world, if you don't give me what I want, I'll go to war and take it anyway.
Yeah.
And where was America and the West in all of this?
That's my
According
question.
to them, their hands were tied.
Well, that's just frustrating. Well, yeah. But oh my god, dude. And the same
You
thing's
see,
happening
when the
now.
war in Georgia started, the first thing the world expected was America and the West to step in. But as the days went by and nothing happened, people started asking why. Wasn't this kinda America's job? Upholding democracy and independence and all of that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Georgia just wasn't important enough. According to one researcher, no one was willing to go to war for Georgia because it was a time in which no one really wanted to provoke Russia. No one wanted to anger Russia over a small, insignificant country with no oil, no strategic importance, and no powerful military. And the reason the whole war had started, Georgia's claims it was going to join NATO? Yeah, that was a pipe dream too. After seeing what happened
Really?
to Georgia, almost none of the other NATO countries could agree to let them join, just in case the same thing were to happen to them. Now, more than 10 years after the war, Georgia is still not a part of NATO. Russia still controls more than 20% of the country, and that peace agreement the two countries signed in 2008, it's
Still.
not worth the paper it's written on.
Holy shit, dude. Wow.
More than a decade later, Russia is still waging a hybrid war against Georgia. In South Ossetia and Abkhazia, Russian soldiers move the physical borders, the barbed wire and fences, a little further into Georgia almost every week. It's gone so far that some Georgians' backyards have now become independent territory. Separatists are still kidnapping Georgian citizens, and the rest of the country, they live in constant fear of another invasion. This time, they know for a fact that America and the West won't lift a finger to help, and there would be nothing stopping Russia from taking control.
Wow. Too little, too late.
Here's the thing. America's lack of reaction in 2008 had given Russia the metaphorical green light.
Yeah.
They'd invaded
Yeah,
Georgia,
definitely.
killed civilians, and then negotiated a ceasefire agreement that gave them a major upper hand, all without America lifting a finger. If
Or
they could
blinking.
get away with that, how much more could they really do? They could just as easily invade Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, and all their other neighbors. Obviously, the invasion wasn't serious enough to get the West involved, so Russia could just go right on doing what it wanted while America minded its own business. Because even though Russia didn't technically win the war in Georgia, they had gotten what they wanted in effect.
They sent that
They'd made it
message.
clear who
Yep.
really called the shots in Eastern Europe.
Fuck.
The same thing goes for today. Even if Russia doesn't win in Ukraine, they're probably still going to come out on top. Russia has already declared the disputed separatist regions of Ukraine as independent, just like they did in Georgia.
Really?
If Ukraine manages to win, or the war ends in a stalemate, Russia is probably going to invade one of its other neighbors to reassert its power. And if Russia wins, they could easily use their victory to threaten other ex-Soviet countries into giving them more control. This win-win situation is a direct result of the invasion strategy they perfected in Georgia in 2008.
For real.
A strategy America and Europe could have prevented if only Georgia wasn't such a, quote, tiny and insignificant country, end quote.
Wow.
The only thing Russia didn't plan for was the unprecedented support of Ukraine by the West.
Yeah, but why now though? Like,
Georgia's invasion should have triggered a massive response from America.
should have.
Here was Russia, a country with a
would've
direct
prevented
link to
this one.
communism, invading a democratic nation and trying to control its government. Before 2008, America had gone to war and got the CIA involved in far less. In 1953, the CIA was directly responsible for the overthrow of Iran's democratically elected prime minister, all because he nationalized the country's oil industry, something Iran's communists supported. He wasn't actually a communist. He never claimed to be one. He didn't even seem to like Russia all that much. But America still went in and caused chaos in the name of fighting the commies. So where was that energy when more than 50 years later, Georgia was invaded by Russia, basically the birthplace of modern communism?
That's so true.
Unlike Iran, here was a direct threat against a democratic country, and America did nothing. That's because everything we know about why America invades, goes to war, or carries out secret operations to overthrow governments is a lie. They tell us it's to preserve democracy or protect innocent people, but the truth is far more sinister. And in the end, all of those countries where the CIA got involved in local politics, almost all of them changed for the worse. And no country is a better example of that than Iran. Iran pretty much went from a West-loving open country to one of America's biggest enemies in a matter of years. That one act of aggression by the CIA was the first domino to fall in what would lead to some of the biggest terror attacks in the world. But to understand just how much damage the CIA caused and why anyone in America would think it was a good idea to kick a Democratic prime minister out, we have to take a deep dive into Iran's history.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Looking into the CIA coup in Iran's mean talking about a lot of stuff that YouTube has a reputation for demonetizing a video over. That's why we've just released it as a new private documentary only available to members of this channel. Once you sign up, you'll also have unlimited access to all of our other documentaries on the release of the Bin Laden Papers, Jeffrey Epstein, MKUltra, the CIA's mind control project, and Monsanto, the company that owns the world's food supply.
The MKUltra
Channel
one
members
seems
have been
fun.
loving the videos. These are the kind of things they should be teaching you in university about how the world works. But unlike university, you get all of this for just $5 a month. And there's a refund policy too, unlike most YouTube memberships. So if you join and you don't think it's worth it, email us within your first month of joining and we will personally refund you for your first month. After your first month, there's no refund because a few bad apples decided to abuse this refund policy. Pause the video and click that join button below right now.
Yeah, I'm broke, honestly.
Have you heard about this conflict before Ukraine? I definitely did not, so let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. If you're new here, this is one of the biggest channels on YouTube for documentaries on money, power, war, and crime. We make multiple documentaries just like this one every single week for free, so if you enjoyed this one, click that subscribe button below. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram for a chance to win $1,000 every single week. We've already had multiple winners, and you can follow me at Jake Tran. That's gonna wrap it up. Stay dangerous out there, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Great freaking video, man. That I never knew the whole thing about Georgia and the way Russia tries to like have this power stranglehold on these like separate like former Soviet Union states. Holy shit. It is an insane world out here. Like all this for power. And yeah, I'm super disappointed that Georgia was a tiny, insignificant country, and NATO or the U.S. did anything to help them and prevent that, and they just got bullied into submission, and boom, and now here we are, and then everyone's stepping up, and I'm glad, I'm glad they're stepping up, but I wish they would have stepped up a lot sooner, because this would have been prevented. The whole Ukraine thing would have been prevented.